Okay, in James chapter 5 this morning, we're getting at question 7. And in this section, we've been looking at prayer and the prayer for the sick. And there's lots of things that we've looked at in regard to that. And we got down to this point where it's talking about prayer, question 6, the prayer, what kind of a prayer availeth much. And we answered that as being effective prayer of a righteous man availeth a lot. Now, then he goes into question 7, which is I found incredibly interesting. Who is for further illustration of the power of prayer, James refers to one prophet of the Old Testament. Who is that? Elijah. Who can tell me something about what he's referring to here?
Well, Elijah prayed for it not to rain. It rained for three years and so many months.
Okay.
And he prayed the rain came.
Okay. And so what does that what's the point? What's he trying to tell us?
He's trying to tell us that we need to believe in prayer.
Okay.
We're going to pray earnestly.
Okay.
In your prayer that it'll work when you pray.
Who knows some of the background relative to Elijah? In the setting, he refers to 1 Kings chapter 17 and 18.
Elijah was fighting with Jezebel.
Always, wasn't he?
Yeah, he killed Jezebel's prophets.
Okay. All right. Who was Jezebel married to?
Ahab,
Good guy, bad guy?
he's bad.
There you go. Incredibly bad. In fact, chapter 16 and verse 33, it says, Ahab had made the Azaroth, which was a god. Thus Ahab did more to provoke the Lord God to Israel than any other kings of Israel who were before him. How would you like to have that behind your name? Wouldn't be too comfortable. So what does chapter 17 and 18 get before us? When you read through them, what picture is the writer trying to paint for us here? And not only the topic here relative to the prayer that Elijah prayed, but what is also being stated in chapter 17 and 18?
To me, it's saying through prayer, anything's possible.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And Elijah was an incredible amount of proof of that in what he...
At that time, Elijah, where the people had provoked God to anger.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what does Elijah end up doing here? In that prayer that he prays and the rain's turned off, who takes care of Elijah? How?
Through prayer.
Yeah, but a little bit more than that. You did what? I'm hearing all this stuff coming one at a time. Okay.
The ravens fed him.
Okay.
And the widow and her son.
Okay, the widow and her son. Okay, that story's also told in chapter 17 and talks about that. But who does he meet in chapter 18? Oh, you guys didn't read this? What? Hurry up. Who does he meet? Guy by the name of Obadiah? You ever heard of him? How have you heard of him? There's one chapter in the Old Testament by the name of Obadiah.
He took 100 prophets and hid them in a cave.
All right. Now, let me clarify something. I'm not 100% sure that the Obadiah that's talked about here in chapter 18 is the same one who wrote the book, but it's very similar. And here's why. We're only talking about 20 years difference here in the time that it takes place in 1 Kings chapter 18 versus when the book of Obadiah is written. So it's very possible that it was. And in light of the fact that he took and he hid how many prophets? 100 of them. And how did he take care of them? In caves, took care of them, fed them. If Jezebel would have got wind of that, him and everybody else would have been dead. Correct? All right. And so there's a link up here with Obadiah and Elijah. I almost said Isaiah, but Elijah. Why is the hookup here interesting?
He worked for the king.
Okay. And so in this 3-year span of time, okay, there's no water. And in fact, if you read the account here, Ahab tells Obadiah, you go one direction, I'm going to go another direction. Let's see if we can find water to take care of the livestock that we have. And so they split up. When they split up, Obadiah and Elijah meet. And Elijah, Ahab has been turning the world upside down trying to find Elijah. Okay? Not particularly because he wanted to say, hi, how are you? But because he wanted him to figure out a way to get this rain turned back on. Okay? So when Obadiah meets Elijah, Elijah says, you go tell Ahab I'll talk to him today. I'll see him today. And Obadiah about passes out. He said, what? You want me to go tell Ahab you're here? As soon as I do that, you'll be somewhere else, and I'm done. I'm history. And then he says, no, I'll be here. Okay? And so he meets Ahab. And guess what Ahab's thought is in verse 17 of chapter 18? And it came about when Ahab saw Elijah that Ahab said to him, is this you troubler of Israel? And he said, I've not troubled Israel, but you have, and your father's house have, because you have forsaken the commandments of the Lord and you have followed the Baals. There was the problem. There was the reason. And then after this in chapter 18, then the big confrontation happens between the prophets of Baal and Elijah. And where there's sacrifice takes place and all of this, and Elijah's poking fun at them. And finally, Elijah prepares his sacrifice and prays to God, and it's taken care of, and the sacrifice is consumed. And what's the purpose behind the whole event?
To show that God is the God of heaven and that the idols are nothing.
Exactly. Not only to Ahab, but everybody that's assembled here, not only with Ahab, the whole nation of Israel is involved in this, and it proves the point to them too. Okay, go ahead.
I think one reason that he maybe chose to make it not rain is I think Baal is the god of weather.
Okay.
All right?
Sure.
And so he's showing that he can, Baal doesn't control the weather.
Right. Yeah, right. And nothing about what Baal does has anything about anything. And it's graphically shown and proven by the sacrifices that take place in this account. Of course, it's such an iconic confrontation between these two that Elijah is just a terrific story to see how God works using Elijah as the tool to demonstrate and to prove the power that he has and what he does. Now, when we look at that then, in that thought about what's taken place, question C, is James telling his brethren that prayer can accomplish anything? Can accomplish things?
Yes.
Well, if you just had the illustration by itself, if you just had that reference in those two chapters, you'd come away concluding that. Of course, the obvious answer is yes. The nation of Israel, and I say that referring to the northern kingdom. Are you guys up on? Are you good with the division of the kingdom after Saul, David, and Solomon? Then when the kingdom divides, you've got Rehoboam to the south, you've got Jeroboam to the north with the 10 tribes, and Rehoboam to the south with the 2 tribes. All right. Jeroboam never did get the northern kingdom started out on the right foot. Never did. Okay, as it started out, he was afraid to lose the people that he had, because if they went back to Jerusalem to worship like they were supposed to at the temple, he was afraid they'd stay there. Okay, which was in the southern kingdom in Judea. So what does he do? He sets up 2 separate locations in the north for them to worship in, and from there it goes crazy. The other interesting part about this within this confrontation that takes place here in 1 Kings 18, it's less than or right in and around 50 years. 50 years later, Assyria smashes the northern kingdom, and it never comes back. It's gone. Okay? So we're in a time frame where this is getting close as far as the nation is concerned, and that's free. I just threw that in so you could understand it. The history is pretty incredible to watch it as it unfolds, but Elijah played an incredible part in all that. Okay, any thoughts about Elijah and the reason why it's illustrated here, why he uses it? Okay. Read 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 12. What did Peter say about God and the prayers of his people?
Eyes of the Lord are over the righteous.
His ears are open to his people's prayers.
They do what? I'm sorry?
His ears are open to his people's prayers.
Okay. That's an incredibly comforting, can be an incredibly comforting thought. What if you're not a Christian?
So
Then what happens?
they're not open to their prayers. He don't hear the prayers.
It's against them that do evil.
Isn't that interesting? Now, the thought that confuses all of this is what? People think they're okay when they're not. How can we know the difference?
By reading and studying His Word, knowing what it says.
Okay.
Apply it to our lives.
Okay. And that's the beauty of what we have and the way we can know. John wrote in 1 John, I believe, chapter 5, talking about these things are written that we can know, that we have life, that kind of thing. We can know it, but the only way we can know it is through the study of His Word. And when we've done that, and when we've allowed God into our life on God's terms, not my terms, then it works. Otherwise, it doesn't. Good thought. All right, question 8. What has James already said about prayers in chapter 1, verse 6?
Ask in faith.
Not wavering.
Okay, ask in faith without doubting. And how about chapter 4, verse 3?
We ask amiss times.
Okay, how can we do that?
Whether we're asking for something we really don't need or something foolish.
Okay.
I pray my basketball team wins tonight.
Well, God, we proved part of that wrong last night, didn't we? Some of those you're asking for miracles. But the idea of having the wrong motives in mind, and who decides the motive?
God.
Yeah. We could also have the wrong motive in mind. Okay? But the point is, God is the ultimate decision maker.
As a Christian, God's going to take care of us. Sometimes we can overdo it by asking for the necessities when He's going to take care of them anyway.
Right?
I mean, if we're a Christian, we know He's going to take care of us.
Right? What makes that, what complicates that?
Mostly our fear.
What we think are necessities too.
Mm-hmm.
And a lack of faith.
Okay?
But shouldn't we still ask for them?
Sure. The ultimate provider is God.
Yeah, and if He's going to provide for us, we need to thank Him for it.
Right. And He's going to answer yes, no, or wait a little while. And some.
With food and stuff like that, He's going to see if we can get the necessities. It might not be the best in the world, but it sustains us.
Gets us by.
Yeah.
Gets us by.
Thank Him for those things. We know through us, Christian, He's going to provide for us.
Again, going back to what we talked about Elijah, the ravens took care of him.
Yeah.
brought,
Wouldn't the scripture lead you in such a way to know what to ask for? If your mind is spiritually set on the things of God, you would know what to ask for. The Bible tells us what to ask for.
mm-hmm,
There's no guesswork about it. Even the Apostle Paul said, you know, if you've had food and raiment, be content for that.
right,
But like the question you asked a while ago, what could we ask amiss? I want a new car. I want a new home. I need a better home. It's really big enough for me.
right,
You know, there's a lot of things going into play there.
Sure.
On your own list, but
sure,
and sometimes we get the desires to have better things. Nothing wrong with it, if it doesn't stand in your way in service to God.
right,
And many times that does.
exactly.
Because what we choose to do in life will determine whether we can serve God.
Now, do you have to have a bank full of money to fall into that situation?
Yeah.
No.
That's what I want us to understand. It can strike every one of us sitting right here this morning. We're all rich compared to somebody.
When Christ was telling them how hard and difficult it was for a Christian to enter heaven, and Paul and the apostles said, well, who can? Then he said, with God, it's possible. All things are possible.
Yes,
How was they looking at it? The apostles was looking at it like, in my view of that, we're all blessed.
yes,
The lack of knowledge can have you ask for the wrong things too. You need to study and know.
yes, yes. Knowledge is everything. And of course, we've studied in James to ask for wisdom. And what's the use of wisdom? In applying the knowledge that we have. And so that working hand in glove together makes it come out right. Makes it come out right. Good thoughts. Other ideas? Am I missing anything?
Yeah, our prayers ought to be a lot of our other people, our brothers and sisters, those that are sick and stuff like that.
You know, we talked about that in our men's class this past week. And it's interesting because we are concerned a lot with health. And a lot of, and I'm not saying we shouldn't be, okay? But what's more important than that?
Your
Spiritual
soul.
welfare.
I'm sorry?
Your soul.
Correct? Correct. Both counts, okay? And that's what we were talking about Wednesday evening. And a lot of times it's the thing we forget about. When are we typically not on our game as well, spiritually speaking, as we are at other times? When we're sick? When we're sick?
That makes me more.
I get that. If we're dialed in right, I get that. Okay.
Hence the reason Satan attacked Job. It was for a purpose, and it's a avenue which the Satan takes.
Absolutely.
And he's very successful at it, or he uses it every day.
And the message of that is for us to not forget that.
People
And-
get too happy sometimes too,
Well, that's true.
and they forget where that lessons and all that stuff's coming from.
Well, you know, we know about peaks and valleys of life. Things are really good up here, and they're not so great down here. And there's a song that I know about that talks about it's the same God up here as down here. And he takes care of both sides of it. Okay? It's up to us to keep the focus.
Sing when you're happy and pray.
All of that. You bet. But it is at that time we need to give, I think, a lot more thought to than we do prayer for the spiritual side of folks when they're sick, that they remain faithful, because it's at that time they can lose that. It's at that time they can lose that faith, and they need to hold on to it, as you said, even stronger at that point in time, because that's what's important. And if they keep that focus, and I want to share this with you too, if they keep that focus, okay, no matter how the sickness comes out, they win. Okay? No matter how it comes out, they win. If their health's returned to them, that's good. They win. If it's not, they still win. They still win. And that's what we need to concentrate on. And that's such a, and we get so caught up in how we feel that we can let that stuff slide. It's like you were saying, Mark, Job was an incredible example of that, and how he kept his focus. It wasn't always great at times, and the book shows that, but he never lost it as far as his relationship with God was concerned.
You know, probably it's possible at times his mind is scrambled a little bit. I guess,
Sure.
You know, trying to figure things out. The Bible says he gets seen with his mouth, but it doesn't tell us what he was thinking about some of the situations. You know, these are things that is going to happen to us too in situations like that. And don't think for a minute that you're not going to have doubts. If something hits you just right, if it's bad enough, you're going to start wondering.
Well, and you think about it from his standpoint. I mean, you've got 3 friends that's come a distance to see you, and they sit down there and look at you a week and don't say a word. What's that going to do to your mental condition? And so what is up with these guys? You know, what is up with these guys? Why are they here? I got enough trouble. You know that. You know, and that's what I'm talking about. All of that affects what we have to say, and what it does to me, it underlines incredibly the power that we have in prayer.
Well, if things bad happen to people, do we respond in such ways? What have you been doing, buddy? What have you been doing?
We get
It's come upon you.
the only problem with that idea, okay, is a lot of times we end up whittling on God's end of the stick and not ours. And we don't know. We don't know the why. Okay, there could have been something totally that we're not aware of happened that caused whatever to happen to this person. Sometimes not.
Sometimes it just happens. Someplace in the Old Testament talks about it just because of luck.
Right.
Some things happen.
At the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
We've known of situations like that. In fact, we've known a situation like that in Cincinnati. The young lady ended up shot.
We still need to be careful, though, how we judge a person when something already bad does happen.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason I say that is because in the past, I've seen it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people are like, you've done something, buddy.
Well, life is
You know,
setting
maybe-
up.
God don't promise none of us is gonna have perfect lives, so we shouldn't expect that nobody else is gonna live a perfect life. You know what I'm saying?
That's well said. That's well said.
Well,
Yeah.
life is set in motion, and sickness and death is there. It's going to get us. It's going to get everybody. There's going to be times that Christians has to realize these things are going to come. Just because I'm a Christian, everything ain't going to be bed of roses.
No,
Life is life.
God didn't promise that.
No. And,
He didn't promise that.
and everything was set in motion. Everything happens to everybody. You can protect yourself by staying away from dangerous situations and places and stuff like that. But if you're in health, you're still going to see the same thing other people see.
Yeah, he expects us to use some common sense, which anymore is not too common.
We need to be careful not to fall into that thought that I'm living good. And at times, it may be really good for you. I think it could be like Job, smooth as it could be,
Mhm.
real good. You may even feel like there's a hedge around you
Mhm.
and that nothing's touching you. But be careful, because that's when Satan will
Oh,
storm
man.
you. If you've got that mindset, Satan will eventually, because when it does happen to you, you're unprepared.
Exactly.
And that's when the enemy will destroy you. It's always when you're unprepared.
See, in the passage we talked about in Peter, where Satan goes around hunting and he wants to devour who he finds. If you get a picture of that, that's not a bite. That's not just, I'm just going to, chunk you on the arm here a little bit. He wants to tear you apart.
Destroy you.
And if we get that focus like that, and that's exactly, Mark, where you're going with that thought, because when those kinds of things hit, they can destroy you, and can do that.
There used to be I thought, as long as you're living for God, there's not gonna be bad things happen to you. I thought that years ago at one time, until I learned better. And trust me, when something a little off out of the way did come, I had a lot of difficulty. It almost destroyed me.
Sure.
To the point where I've seen it destroy other people, where they didn't care for God no more.
Right.
They blame God.
They blame God.
You blame God. You don't care for Him. You don't want nothing to do with Him.
How could you let this happen to me?
Yes.
Gotcha.
It will happen to you if you have the wrong attitude in your life.
Right. Right. It's just, you know, it's like we talked about in James. It was over in chapter 1, I believe, when he talked about that. Verse 2 of chapter 1, consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials. Not if. When you encounter them. It's going to happen, just like you said. It's going to be there. Good thought.
I think the more you live for God, the more it's going to happen.
Well, you think about it. You think about the opportunity and the percent of, let's call it percent of concentration that Satan wants to put in on every one of us sitting right here, and everybody else in a you know, assembled this morning and worshiping God the way He'd have them worship them. Those are the ones He wants to really put the hammer on and do what He can to destroy them. He's got everybody else.
Why does He want to waste any effort?
He's got them.
You know?
Yeah, He's already got them. And so,
His team.
I'm sorry?
They're on His team.
Absolutely, they're helping all they can help. You know, they can do all they can do. But the idea then of Him concentrating His effort on us becomes pretty amazing and pretty scary, actually, when you think about it. And again, go back to Mark, your example with Job. Look what he did to that guy.
If you go into service as an infantryman, you're stuck on the front line.
Yep. Yep.
That's the way it is.
Yep.
The Bible, God in all His wisdom knew that. He created everything, situations and all. And in the battle, if you're an infantryman, you go straight to the front.
Right.
That's the reason He uses the illustrations of the armor. Be a good soldier. You know, if you become a soldier, you're enlisted to Him for that purpose, and you're not your own no more.
Right.
And many a times, for the longest of time, I really didn't realize myself what it meant to give yourself up.
Mm-hmm. What?
Give yourself up.
How do you do that now? How's your feeling with that now?
Oh well, it's different. I'm more prepared to do as He would want me to do. I'm more willing to do that. Before, even in service, even in our worship service, I'd be more like a crawdad. If you know what a crawfish is, they go backwards more than they go frontwards.
Okay.
Because they're faster that way.
Okay.
They can get away from it quicker. If you see a crawfish escaping, he's going in reverse. And that's the way a lot of Christians are. And I look back on myself and the way I shunned things I was supposed to do. I was more like that crawfish than I was something going forward.
Good
I
thought.
haven't given myself up yet.
Okay.
Your reactions cause things to get worse sometimes or better, you know what I'm saying? And so I think that's got a lot to do with it. If your mind's right and you react right, the situation will level out and smooth out, you know what I mean? And if your mind ain't right and you react aggressive and wrong, then you're liable to end up with a messier situation, you know? You're not using God to negotiate.
Well, that was the hook I was going to make right there. Is that as long as you've got God in the mix, things will work out somehow. Okay, but it's when we decide that we can make the decision and we can answer the problem that a lot of times we get into, like you said, more trouble than what we started out with. Okay, good thoughts. Other ideas? Good deal. Let's go to the next section here in this chapter, which is verses 19 and 20. And he changes his thought process, and like I said, in chapter 5, he gives us little thoughts relative to various topics. And this last one is the idea of restoring the erring, verses 19 and 20. And question 1 of those 2 verses, it says, what is truth? And he refers to 1 John 1:17 and 17:17 and 1 Peter 1:23 or 22 and 25. What is truth?
Word of God.
Okay. Had that question ever been asked before?
Yep.
By who? Yeah. John chapter 18, verse 38. Pilate asked that question. What is truth? To the one who was truth. And he asked that question to him. To us, we understand today we can't ask that question of the Lord directly as he's standing here and we're talking back and forth with him, but we can know through the pages of his word what truth is. And that's where this goes as far as establishing a reference point. If you don't have something to refer to, how can you know if you're right or wrong or not? And so that's how he starts this whole thought. What does it mean to err from the truth? Question 2.
Turn away.
Stray away from it. That's the idea behind going away from. Is that possible?
Yes.
Is it possible for Christians to have that problem?
Yes.
It's the only ones that can.
I'm sorry?
So that's the only ones that can.
Okay, all right, good thought. Good thought. But the idea is, in straying from the truth, it separates us from God. And that is huge. That is huge. Unless we see it and fix it, it can be eternally, the consequences can be eternal. All right. What does convert mean? Question 3.
To change.
Okay. How does it have reference, or how do we tie that in to the idea of truth?
Well, we can turn and believe a lie instead of believing the truth.
Okay. And we can do it the other way too, right? We can have the truth and turn away from it. Same deal. Okay. Convert is talking about turning back to the truth, or in other words, simply to change. To change the direction that you're going. Go ahead.
When you look at James chapter 19-20 there, he says, especially 20, let him know that he that turneth the sinner from the errors of his ways. He's talking about brethren that sin, but when a brother sins and turns away into error, he's been really converted back to what he originally was.
Correct.
And not only just a sinner, but one that's living in sin and allowing sin to control him. So he has to be converted back. In other words, just like Jesus said to his disciples when he's teaching them about little children, he said, unless you be converted and become as these little children. So he said, you got to change. You got to convert. You got to convert yourself into something else.
When Jesus used the example of little children, when he tells these folks to become like little children, convert and become, what's the nature of a little child?
Forgiving and humble.
When they can.
Innocence.
Ready to be filled with something else.
But it's also teaching.
They, next thing you know, they're playing. There's nothing between them. They forgive.
Okay? And it goes a little further than that, doesn't it?
They're innocent.
Innocent? What was the word?
I said innocent.
Innocent, okay. And not only in the forgiving of it, and like you said, they're going back to playing with each other, but it's forgotten.
Yeah.
It's forgotten.
They don't hold it against each other.
Right.
And they're teachable. I mean, you can teach them. They're not prejudiced by all kinds of teachings. So they're teachable. You can teach them too, and that's some of our problem as we get older and we try to convert. It's hard for us to be teachable.
Yes.
The remark was made by Catholics at one time that if they got to a child young enough, had it for a while, they would never convert from it. You know, the Bible tells us something similar to that. If we raise them up, those upright, they won't turn from it. If we actually done it right, I believe with all my heart that they would not turn. Now, other people has different thoughts about that, you know, that if you raise them shelter, they won't depart from it.
They may slide a little bit, but I believe they always end up back if you show them the right way, I think.
They're always going to know the right way. The choice that they have, the choice that they'll make, is totally on them as to what they finally decide to choose. Okay, but you're right. They're going to have the reference points.
People wait too long to grow up because their children are already in a position where they're already sick.
Well,
And I'm talking about child. People say, "Oh, that child was too young to start doing this, start doing that to it." Don't fool yourself. You will regret that idea.
You got that right. And we've been, Linda and I have been involved with teaching with kids for years, and I'll tell you what you can do with 2 and 3 year olds is amazing. What you can do with them and getting thought processes in their mind about God and mom and dad and obeying and doing that kind is incredible. And it, like you said, it starts at a very, very early age. Go ahead.
I think that I go back to the fact of choices that you make. You take like the Apostle Paul, as he was Saul, how strictly he was taught with the law. And he was, in his own self, he was perfect in that law. But when he was confronted with the truth, he converted. You got Simon, who was a sorcerer, and he bewitched the people for many years. And yet, when he seen what could be done with the gospel, he converted to it. Yeah, he made a mistake thinking he could buy it, but it showed that he wanted to be right with God because he asked Peter to pray for him.
Mm-hmm.
So here was a man that's had some age on him that was converted. Most of the people in the Bible that was converted to the truth was people who had age on them because there was nobody reared in the church at that time. So it's just how bad do you want the truth and just how much do you want to obey the truth. The truth will set you free, and a lot of people recognize that.
Sure. Go ahead.
We had a lady that was a member of the church. She was converted over from the Baptist. Her father-in-law did it. And she said she thought that people that was converted from another religion into the Church of Christ was stronger Christian than kids that was raised in the Church of Christ because they took it for granted.
Well, they have an inherited religion, and sometimes that's the way people look at it. It's just because mommy and daddy did it, and if that's the extent of your religion, you got a bad religion, regardless even you say I'm a member of the Lord's church.
Right.
There is no doubt that that is a big play in the scheme of things. But we also are very aware, and the Bible teaches it very positively, and there's no doubt about it, there are weak Christians in the church that still call brethren. Now, there's going to be that weakness in there.
Right.
And we have to be very careful. If you have to go to the point of where something that is lawful for you to do, and you're not to have it because of another brother, that consideration goes beyond anything out there. And it ought to give you some insight in how this weak brother are to be treated.
Right. And if you remember when we studied the book of Hebrews, it talked about that as the Hebrew writer talked to them. He couldn't tell them things at this moment in time because they couldn't handle it. They weren't strong enough knowledge-wise, and they had need. They were at a spot where they should be teachers, but you have need that someone teach you again. You know that. So your point's well taken. That happens. And the interesting part about it, it's on us to understand that.
I've known people that lived, that maybe were Christians for a little while, shortly when they were young, and fell away until they were older and come back.
Mm-hmm.
That's a wonderful thing.
Sure.
That's a wonderful thing. I'll tell you something else that's wonderful. A person that tries and messes up 7 times a day for years. That's there, but still messing up. And they finally get it right. There's something wonderful to that, because they both are gonna have a home in heaven when they die, when they get it right. There's no doubt you have a person that converts over after they get their belly full. That's the way I look at it sometimes. They've had enough, and they convert over. And there's also another person that we see in the Bible that struggles every day, struggles a lot. But they are required to make it themselves. They're required to get to a certain point. We're to help each other get there. No matter
Right.
where we struggle or we don't supposedly struggle, we are to help one another
As a Christian, you should,
to get there.
can't feel no better than help somebody else or shouldn't, you know what I mean? You're supposed to pray, even pray for your enemies, so you should definitely have to pray for your brothers and sisters in Christ that are having trouble. I mean, I think everybody has trouble.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Not 7 times 7, but 7 times 7.
Right.
Now that person is struggling.
The interesting part about that is as we've talked about, God's a heart reader. We're not. We're not. We try to take a look at what's happening and what's going on, but we don't know what's going on inside that person's heart and how things are working for them or not working for them. Okay? But as long as you're saying, as long as they're trying and they're trying to put things together the way that they should be put together, God will take care of the rest.
They're counting in his numbers, you know what I mean?
Right.
Well, it's like Paul, when he confronted him, he said, by now, you are to be teachers.
Right.
You are to be.
Mm-hmm.
But he was willing to go back from time given and start all over again. So they should have been there, but
Right.
they wouldn't. Many of us would have went, I ain't fooling you no more. I've had it.
Well, I'll tell you, it's interesting when you start looking through the pages of the Old Testament, and I'll tell you, it's a study in and of itself. And look at the patience of God, and look at what He put up with the nation of Israel, who He chose to be His people, and yet they did it. They put it back in His face time and time and time again. Yet patiently, if they would return, He'd take them back.
God knows what's in heaven, and He knows what's in hell, because He created it. He does not want us to go there for eternity, but He cannot be in the presence of a sinful person that will not give themselves up.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Go ahead.
Go about converting people out of the denomination and so forth. My sister's been going to church for years. She's going with this one where they have the Easter egg hunt and teach everything up to, and they call it church pride.
What can I tell you?
What can you say?
That's the reason why you have to be careful.
How do
when
you
you're
tell them
traveling.
they're wrong? They got the right name.
Well, no matter what name they got.
It's. Do they find it here?
That's true.
If they don't find it here,
It's not easy though.
I agree. And what complicates that is the how we do it. Is the how we do it.
Attitude.
Because regardless, one way or two, there's a soul there that needs saving. Okay? And we can slam the door and turn it off and they're gone. Okay? Or we can easily handle that, or try to easily handle it. A lot of prayer that we just talked about. A lot of prayer that we just talked about in trying to help and serve and to say the right things at the right time to help those folks. And so you're right. I mean, there's no question that's a difficult.
You need to let God help you negotiate that as well. You know
That's
what I'm
right.
saying?
Just remember, and I go back to this a lot. Go back to Nehemiah, when he was figured out by the king that there was something wrong, that his countenance wasn't right, and he asked Nehemiah, "What is your problem? What's going on?" And before Nehemiah answered, the verse plainly states that he prayed. Even before he answered the king, he asked God for help. And God does it and gives us the word. So anyway, good thought. Our time is up here this morning. We'll mark question 4 there in that section and get into that Wednesday night. Appreciate your help. Thank you. You guys taught a good class this morning. Thank you.